And it is a beautiful day for a podcast. It is a beautiful day to stand up to bullies. Hello, Los Angeles. I am Jeremy Lee Quinn. This is Unblocked Live. We are live, and there has been a lot happening here in Los Angeles specifically over this last week. And not just this last week, but ever since the beginning of July, we had two riots, essentially, counter protests that showed up at a right-wing protest, and then they became riots. That's indisputable. That was July 3rd, July 11th, 2 weeks later, July the 17th. Then you have a series of anti-vax protests in West Hollywood, mostly, in front of Harlow, a nightclub bar, and after that in front of the Abbey. But before that, before Harlow, was an incident at Cider Hospital, at the breast cancer treatment clinic. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to break it down, and we're going to talk about the big incident at Harlow, in which a lone attacker showed up and made his way through the crowd very aggressively, pushed somebody over, made contact physically with a couple of people. We're going to talk about that. We're going to break it all down here on Unblocked Live. This is the anti-polarization podcast, and we are going to discuss it all because on Saturday, tomorrow, here in Los Angeles, there's been a lot of internet buzz about, and I don't know how they're going to do this, because this is a mainstream city hall event that is supposed to happen, in which, and I say mainstream in the sense that there is a actual recall candidate that I believe is speaking. This is a permitted event, I am told, that is going to take place on Saturday at City Hall. So somebody here says August the 14th. Yep, that's tomorrow. So you guys all know. So thank you for joining the chat. Be sure to weigh in if you want to. You can subscribe to me on Twitter. That's my Twitter handle. And please subscribe to youtube.com/unblockedlive. There is a lot to talk about. And you know what I'm going to do a little different is I'm going to take your questions. I'm going to take more comments than usual. The reason is this. If you follow me on Twitter, I've been going back and forward by Antifa shot caller Chad Loder. Shot caller is the best way that he calls the shots, basically. He's always, just the other week he told people to get bear spray. He has been commenting about tactics significantly and openly on Twitter. One thing I'm going to mention, I was talking to a buddy of mine earlier. I was surfing, and there's a problem with Twitter. There's a very easily fixable problem with Twitter, which is if you get Twitter mobbed, if you get attacked on Twitter, you're really silenced. You have no recourse, especially if you're someone who does not have a lot of followers. So if a Chad Loder comes along, and Chad Loder is openly an Antifa organizer with 90,000 followers who, if you cross this person can say things about you. And I'll get into this sort of back and forth because it's been very eye-opening what I've seen in sort of, back and forth banter on a Twitter thread. Because what happens is he'll take sections of what you say and then he'll retweet them out of context and add his commentary. Last Saturday, in a period of less than 12 hours, he retweeted me 13 times, adding commentary like Quisling. He called me a cretin. He called me an Andy No. At one point, he said he thought I was an op. I guess that means an operative, either for I don't know what I don't know what he's thinking. to be quite honest, but all of these labels get filtered down in your comments, and you have no recourse, especially if you're deboosted like I am. I've been deboosted ever since last summer. I don't know why. I can only assume it's because people flag certain comments, which shouldn't be flagged. For those of you who know me, I maintain a very calm, dispassionate presence on Twitter where I don't get sucked in to act emotionally. But there's a problem, and that is that somebody who's an influencer like that can summon a mob, can summon like ideologues, people who think exactly the same way, and those people can attack you. And you are silent. You have no recourse whatsoever. What Twitter should do, consider doing, is if you're tagged in a post, if you're named even, that you should be able to reply to that post and your comment gets all the way to the top. And I would even say gets linked to the post itself, so that they are married, they are paired, and then that person disparaging you has to deal with your rebuttal. Because if you don't allow that, then you are opening yourself to what we have seen time and time again, which is people getting attacked and people losing their jobs. And oftentimes it's slanderous, it's unsubstantiated, it's defamatory. And a mob can be defamatory very quickly. I've been called everything. So I was called, Quisling. What the latest is right-wing propagandist. I've never voted for a right-wing candidate, nor do I have right-wing associations. But they, that's easily provable. I could show you all of my comedy stuff from when I was a comedian in New York City, which is always very, very left-leaning on social issues and so forth. So they come up with these labels out of nowhere, and then they parrot each other. And the next thing you know, you have, even if you just have half a dozen accounts coming at you, what you need to do is you need to sort of make a psychological adjustment. These are not real people, and they're not real people because they're not showing their names. They're not showing their faces. They are hiding anonymously just like they do in the street in Black Bloc. And a friend said to me, what kind of self-esteem do you have to totally disguise yourself when it comes to name, when it comes to being out on the street, protesting, when it comes to just having a conversation and engaging with somebody on Twitter. So we're seeing that with an alarming efficiency. It works. It gets people to shut up. So even if you're just a mainstream news reporter trying to cover leftist tactics or talk about violence and have a conversation about, is this where we want protest? Because now every protest is suspect in the sense that you're wondering, well, when are the people going to come out, dressed head to toe or black? And it's the same on the right too. When are the people going to show up in a helmet? And there was a guy in Portland that had, what do you call it? Like a soldering, like a welder's mask on this weekend. So it becomes predictable. When are these protests not going to be protests anymore? When are they going to become full pedestrian LARPs where, live action role play where people are banging each other over the head with flagpoles and spraying each other with bear mace? And it's become too regular, and we need to figure out how to de-escalate the situation, in my opinion. Because oftentimes the people, especially, and I will speak to the left, there's a fantastical idea of who's being attacked sometimes. I want to just propose that. And let's apply that question to everything we look at. Are the people being attacked really the people that the activists imagine they are? They always talk about how they're the last stand between the country falling into Nazism. Is it true? Is it provable that these people whose protests are consistently crashed? Because that's what it is. It's crashing the other person's protest. Are these people who the activists who attack their protests think they are? Where should we start? Where should we begin? Feel free to ask questions, comments. I'll try to keep up. We got a lot of comments, and I appreciate that, y'all. I'm gonna play. Someone's talking about, there was a lot going on in Portland. The thing is LA hasn't been activated like this before, where it's all out street combat. Like we saw We Spa protest 1 and 2, mostly 2, because 1, all of the attacks that happened in the AM before, I guess 11:40 AM is when the militant right showed up. Dude with a baseball bat, people with, helmets and so forth. A guy with a knife who ends up cutting 2 people, one of them being a right-winger themselves. So this escalation of violence, this continual cycle needs to be broken in some way. And the only way I think we're going to begin to do that is if we start dealing with the material honestly, the material showing us what happened. So let's take a look. I'm going to start with Harlow. This is from Jess Weber is the photographer. He is a right-wing aligned, embedded photographer. And the person that you're going to see, the assailant in this video, actually takes up issue specifically with the photographer. Now, I know I said I have a special guest today. I have been corresponding with the man in this video who you're going to see hit a bunch of people. He was supposed to appear. Last I heard from him, he's telling me that he has a work thing coming up and he has to fly out for the weekend. But I've given him my phone number. And so my phone is handy, and he can call in at any time while we talk about him. Because, look, originally he was supposed to be a guest on the show. I don't like talking to people behind their back, so I've given him my phone number, and I have told him. And this person is named, he calls himself Just a Man Trying to Go for a Fucking Walk. And he's at Harlow Incident on Twitter. Now, interestingly, he says he's not an activist, but he very quickly plugged into the activist Twitter accounts. But he has told me that he lives with an immunocompromised woman, and that he was very much affected by the reports that he got. And I tried to get an answer from him. Where did you get your reports on Cider-Sinai? Because he is cited, and I'll show you messages, and he wrote a big, long Google Doc in which he talks about why he went off the handle in late July. And this is July the 29th, I believe. I got a lot of dates in my head, but I think that's when this happens. He says he's not an activist, but that the Cider-Sinai incident specifically, and I'll show you, and we're going to look at that video too, that's what brought him to do this. And again, this video is shot by an embedded right-wing aligned videographer named Jess Weber. So that's his video.
Oh my God! Please! Fucking get it! Stop the fucking screaming! Just fucking get that piece of shit! Let's go!
Get him! We got him down! Get it!
So the group tackles him. The guy with a belt there in the blue tank top, which says USA, he is kind of trying to be a peacemaker, and he kind of lets the guy go eventually before there's a big showdown in the alley. For those of you who have seen it, Vishal shows up, who is a leftist Antifa-aligned videographer and activist journalist, and he gets punched. And we can look at that in a second, but let's just look at the beginning here. Here we have somebody with a bullhorn yelling at Harlow. Now, I went onto that deck in Harlow, and I had a couple beers. The next day, not this day. I was there earlier, and I left just before this happened because I thought nothing was happening, incidentally. But watch how this guy with a microphone, I believe his name is Nick. Watch how he's blindsided here. And I'm going to tell you what the assailant says his motivation was here, his reasoning.
Out the weak, the stupid. Get the fuck up!
So, as I said, I've corresponded with this fellow, Just a Man Trying to Go for a Fucking Walk. And he says that there was a confrontation, and maybe I'll wait to get into this and see if he does call in. But he basically says that there was a verbal confrontation with a woman, and that he wouldn't hit a woman, so he went and hit the man. That's what he's saying. Again, I talked to everybody, so I'm willing to hear him out, but clearly you have several assaults. Now, what brought him to this? He says it was Cider-Sinai. And what happened at Cider-Sinai? And basically what happened at Cider-Sinai the week before is Antifa-aligned activists, including Vishal, who shows up not filming, but in a mask and not being a journalist as far as I can tell. But look, we'll look at all this video and we'll dissect it. And let's take a look first at video that I shot this morning, which is going to be a little boring, but this is going to show you the layout I went to the breast cancer clinic and I shot the layout just so you could see what everything looks like. So here we have the entrance, and this is okay. I'm gonna back that up. Sorry about that. So here we have the entrance, and this is significant. This is significant that this is where people would come and go. Now, by this crane, which wasn't there that day, that's where the leftists start off. Now, the right-wing anti-vax protest was all the way on this corner here. You can see the signs that say Beverly and San Vicente there. That's where they started. Now, that metro sign is significant. If you look at other people's video, that metro sign, you will see often. They fight right in front of it. So what happens is that the left comes all the way down, from the crane to... Now that it's backed up, you can see the distance kind of, but mind you, this is a wide angle lens. They come about, I guess 5/8 of the way down, more than half the way down. And then the right comes, the right-wing protesters come and they meet them. And then there's a confrontation, and we'll get to how those confrontations played out. But I just wanted to show you the layout. Now, this is just a man trying to go for a fucking walk at Harlow Incident. Again, he was supposed to appear. You'll see in one of his messages to me that he said he was going to. But basically, he says, on 7/29, on a walk in my neighborhood, I got attacked by a mob of cowardly, lying, paid actors pretending to be anti-vax protesters. Now I'm supposedly Antifa. Okay. A lot to unpack there. A lot to unpack. First of all, the paid actors conspiracy theory is fascinating. It is called hashtag explore talent. And it's been devised by a leftist who is theorizing that everybody is an out of work actor. Now, those of you who know, I have long been open about the fact that I love acting and I've worked as an actor, but that doesn't mean that anybody is paying me to engage in political discourse. And I don't have any proof, and I don't think this person who has the hashtag explore talent conspiracy theory has any actual proof that people are getting paid. But if you could see, another thing about this guy's profile is, look, he has Chad Loder in his banner, basically in a feud that with this other guy named Roman Drake, not a guy I know or have spoken to ever, but who appeared in my Twitter feed. Eventually, they all ganged up on him. I mean, he was saying some, provocative, filthy things, and so they ganged up on him. They got him deplatformed, and this is the guy's profile anyway. So I do think it's interesting that he's willing to put Chad Loder in his profile. Now, this is his manifesto. So y'all dumb fuckers can drop that bullshit right now. In fact, there was absolutely nothing political about my actions yesterday. It was about basic human decency and protecting your neighbors. It's that simple. 2 days ago, I was leaving Trader Joe's and I saw several of these same protesters gang up on a woman, essentially assault/detain her. I don't know the circumstances, so I didn't get involved, but my inaction burned me up inside. I don't like bullies. I don't like cowards. I actually don't like bullies either. Just a little editorial there. I don't like cowards who only raise their voice when they're in a crowd. And I don't like motherfuckers putting their hands on women. And I'd seen video of them harassing and assaulting a fucking breast cancer survivor outside a clinic at Cider Sinai. How the fuck you're going to stand here and call yourself a patriot? Okay. So when you're supporting people who attack a woman fighting cancer, what the fuck is wrong? So this plays into this person's mindset. And he says this several times, that it's the Cider Sinai incident that is reported by Vice News as having been, the headline is that anti-maskers attack a breast cancer patient. That's what the headline is that the anti-maskers put on this attack. You can see some of his other tweets. Can't wait till you catch it and die. Then ask God why he didn't protect you so he can slap the stupid out of your soul and say, I sent you the fucking vaccine, you unbearable twat. So this is the guy that, hit everybody. And quite frankly, I don't see his language being that different than that Roman person. It's just, it's equally as troubling and arguably disturbed, or should we say just aggressive. Let's just say aggressive. I'm not going to put labels on anybody. But then he goes on to say, you don't want a vaccine, you don't want to wear a mask. And then his next tweet is, y'all, buy a rope and get the fuck out of our lives. You won't be missed. And then this is him weighing in on the photographer and adding the FBI. So this guy is, I guess you could say, aggressive. And again, I don't know if he's going to call in, but this is a private message here. I told him I sent this to him, and this is a private message he sent me. He said, there are plenty of other places to stage protests, but I simply will not stand idly by while women and or breast cancer survivors are being assaulted, harassed, or otherwise intimidated, regardless of one's politics. And yes, I'm open to doing the live stream interview. So I've had various back and forths with this person. I do not know his name. I do know that he's been in touch with law enforcement. And he told me that, and I made some calls to confirm it and found out that is true. Here's another look at the entrance. Now, I know this is very boring and procedural right now, but we'll get to all the fighting later.
Where the leftists approach
This is
from.
where you see the leftists
see Vishal and Rocky.
Here, and they have at least two press people with them. And I'm going to do the walk here. I'm going to turn the volume down so you don't have to listen to me talking twice, because I think I'm talking this. Again, I'm showing that's the entrance where people come and go. And this is the walk that the leftists would have to do to reach the right-wing protest. They have to do this walk. Again, I said like roughly 5/8 of the block. And then the people who are all the way at the end come in and they meet right here by this metro sign. And you see the metro sign behind the right-wing protesters throughout. Why is this important? Because it's important to know that this is a Antifa-aligned counter-protest. Now, the old school leftists back in the sort of, insurrecto anarchist days, the motto was shut it down, not just shut it down. Shut it down goes all the way back to the 60s. I was over at a cousin's house, and she had from Wisconsin, a sort of radical book that was published in the 60s, and her brother was on the book, who's now passed away, and he's raising his fist, and it says, shut it down. That's 1960s. These mottos are pretty consistent. Shut it down then becomes don't give them the space to organize. And that was in regards to the feuds that you had in the late 80s into the 90s between the neo-Nazi skinheads and the anti-racist skinheads. And the leftists, the anti-racist skinheads, were about don't give them the space to organize, shut it down. And that's what we see essentially is groups coming to shut down people's protests that they do not agree with. Okay? Now, this is... Now let's get to the fight, if you will. I wish that he was on this discussion, because if we were to look at the video of how this fight starts, would he have the same opinion? Would Mr. Just Going for a Fucking Walk have the same opinion about does it match the Vice headline? I'm just going to ask that question. Now, I'm not going to comment on this part, but I will show other people's comments. And the reason I'm not going to is because they'll take my comments out of context, and then they'll we know what they do. They've been doing it for the last, weeks with me. And for me, it goes all the way back to when this guy, Andrew, who was a former UC Berkeley grad student, posted a picture of me, said I was a Capitol stormer, and then pinned me as a right-wing propagandist. Basically, that snowballs. I get recognized in the crowd. People point me out. They try to send a mob on me, call me a chud, whatever the hell a chud is. It's from a movie, for those of you who don't know, called Cannibalistic Humanoid Underground Dwellers, 80s, sort of pulp horror flick. But they'll call anybody a chud, really. If it appears that you're against them, you're a chud, and that's all. So someone says Vice is Antifa sympathizer. I'd go even further than that. I've seen articles that get launched in Vice that then get picked up and parroted by so many other publications. That's what happened at Cedars-Sinai. You have Tess Owen for Vice, who consistently is putting out one-sided material. I don't think we can argue that. It's one-sided reporting. It gets put out there. It gets picked up by The Independent, The Guardian, whoever, and pretty soon you have this emboldened narrative that may or may not be true. And the point of this show is not for me to make a determination, but it would have been to ask Mr. Just a Man Trying to Go for a Fucking Walk, who flat out assaulted people in front of Harlow, and seems to be very much an aggressor in this in this story, in this narrative. I would ask him, does this change your perspective? Let's watch in slow motion when the first aggressions and first physical action, and you guys tell me what you see. So let's break it down. First, and the woman that's in this video was verbally basically going at it with the anti-vax protesters. Let's watch what happens. That's the first physical contact there. The first physical contact here is on the bullhorn. Look, this person here in the black in the back raises his hand, and you see the hand on the bullhorn? Well, you know, in a law enforcement standpoint, you know, your property, we would have to ask, is that an extension of your person? Is that an extension of your person? Watch what happens. That's the first physical contact by this individual on the right who is wearing what looks like to be a Blink 182, I would say 2009 tour short. Anyways, so she then retaliates on him, on Blink 182, right? Now, woman in the red sunglasses who had earlier been telling people that she seeks cancer treatment at this exact clinic, then does something here. And only one publication mentioned this, and that's the New York Post mentioned this. This is a body move which is very similar to what is put on Vishal in the alley by Harlow. And then she is now lower, right? Because she's been knocked off the sidewalk. Okay? So then she punches. Oops, sorry. She punches. And then she goes a second time for her. And then she manages to rip off her mask. So there you have it. There you have the breakdown in action. Now, do I want to comment about that? Not really. And the reason is who wants to be seen, who wants to be seen commenting on, or refuting a headline that says, one thing, but maybe your eyes see another. So what do you guys say? What do you guys say happened? What did you see? It's so messy. It is messy. Well, you know what? Luckily, we have another angle. So let's look at this angle. But before we do, I want to show you one thing. This is the bump move. So after this guy goes crazy, some of you probably know that the confrontation then moves to an alleyway here. And there's that guy in the, who's trying to keep the peace. And then Vishal shows up.
Shit! Who do you think you are? Because we want freedom, we're standing up for
Stand back. Where could we walk?
Now watch the guy to the right.
He's in an alley.
All they want us to do is keep on killing one.
I'm stopping the video because he comes up from behind and he catches Vishal as he's walking backwards and he puts on a body block, Once again, we're seeing this move. I see this move time and time again where somebody forces contact. This is interesting. In Huntington Beach back in April, I think it was like April 15th, there was a Black Lives Matter protest on what was supposed to be a rumored White Lives Matter thing, right, in Huntington Beach. You can see me in CJTV's video because I'm right next to an Asian guy who decides to confront a guy with an actual swastika tattoo, an actual neo-Nazi swastika tattoo. And you can hear me asking over and over again, hey, what's the story behind the Nazi tattoo? Hey, what's the story behind the Nazi tattoo? I'm asking it, 5 or 6 times in CJTV's live stream of Huntington Beach on April 15th. Or April 15th? No. April 15th, I think, was Hollywood. But it's in April in Huntington Beach. So the guy, the Asian guy is saying, why do you hate me? Why do you hate me to this guy? And then he stops, and the guy with a Nazi tattoo bumps into him. And then the guy with the Nazi tattoo hits him. And Huntington Beach police arrested both of them, interestingly enough, because then a whole mob scene is happening. Eventually, they arrest the guy with the Nazi tattoo, but they also arrest the counter protester for impeding the person's path and essentially instigating. So using your body, if we go back to this video like this, is clear instigation. We've had that precedent set up, and most of you knows what happens here. He hits him, goes again. That's the peacemaker guy. He's like saying, come on. The guy to the right there is just sort of a question for him. That's Mr. I'm just going for a walk. Does he know Vishal? He has his hand on him here. I don't know. That's a question for him. I don't know.
Get him!
There's his face. This is bad. This is bad here. He goes, and he gets knocked down. And you can hear, the other thing about Jess Weber, who shot this video, you can hear him in the background relishing in it. And I don't know, man. That's just, is anybody going to just be a journalist? Is anybody going to just be a journalist to just document and talk to? Do we all have to be, does everybody have to be a sensationalist? Is that really what's going to get us moving forward as a society? Is cheerleading like that? Just a thought to throw out there. Periscope keeps freezing. Glad to see YouTube is working. Well, I also keep pausing. I don't know if that has anything to do it. Someone said, I'm getting a couple comments here. Here, let's see. This is good. Getting into someone's face with a foghorn, meaning a bullhorn, I guess, is not good. But then you can see the man touch the foghorn first and moves it out of the way. Then woman did body block. Then foghorn attacks. Now, before that, the woman with the quote-unquote foghorn, the bullhorn, she does retaliate when the man touches the bullhorn first. But as Dan Rodwell says here, that you can see that the man touched the bullhorn first. I would agree with that. That's what my eyes saw. If anybody else sees something else that we're missing, please tell me. And then the woman did a body block. Yes, she did a body block. So this woman with the red glasses who's been in the headlines as being attacked, let me ask you this. Who is it, her or the person with the bullhorn who makes the first physical contact? You guys tell me, okay? Let's take a look from another angle. This is in slow motion. A little earlier. Now I'm going to pause it 1 second. So she comes in and yells in his face, Mr. Blink 182 here, "You're a dumb motherfucker. Get out of my friend's face." Something to know. The woman that's here in the pink, who's arguing there with the black hair, and you could see the guy with the cast, right? Arguing with her, right? And the Blink 182, it is 2009 tour. I knew that, actually. I've studied this video a little bit. So Mr. Blink 182 is arguing with the woman in the pink. Now, the woman in the pink is the one who made a video of herself. She's a right-wing anti-vax, anti-mask. She goes into the cancer clinic and says she has an exemption, that she can't wear a mask and she has an exemption and that she's there for services. It's not clear what kind of appointment she has. But Vishal, who is the person who promoted this whole event, Vishal is, again, the Antifa-aligned journalist, and activist journalist, I should say, in that he documents these things. But he's not documenting it here because he actually is the guy with the cast. That is Vishal. Okay. So we have Vishal himself there in the cast. He's the one who promoted this event, saying that the woman in pink set the whole thing up, that she went in with the intention to make a scene. Now, she doesn't talk to the other the patients in the clinic in her video. She only talks to the security and the nurse, and she's films herself saying, I should be able to go in here without a mask. That's what they're arguing about, I presume. Watch again.
Yo, you're a dumb motherfucker. Get the fuck out of my friend's face. Get out of my face.
Why isn't Vishal filming?
Get out of my face. Get out of my
All right, and then various fights break out. Now, I zoomed in here and slowed it down so you can really get a sense of what's going on. But let me look at the comments. Does anybody have, why call anti-vax right-wingers? That's actually a good point. How do I know that everybody here is a right-winger? Well, the majority of people are repeat sort of characters, if you will, that show up within the scene. So we've seen these people a lot. They are basically the activist right. So I call them right. Why call them right wingers? Because they were at the weak spot. But you're right. Could it be that there's somebody in this crowd who is anti-vax or anti-mask who isn't a right winger? That's possible. That's certainly possible. I'll give it that. But for the most part, we know these people to be in the scene, in the right wing activist scene. They were Trump supporters. They were very active in the Beverly Hills Freedom group. So I would say a majority of them are right wingers. It's certainly possible that there could be one or two or ever. And I don't mean to generalize, but it's a good question. I like that question. Let's see what Ira Gershwin has to say. It's a scale of judgment. I don't know that he was standing there and she blew the horn in his face, but they did pursue her a bit. So this is probably before we showed this angle. You could see that she clearly comes over and yells in the guy's face with the bullhorn. And just to retaliate, a rebuttal on that, but conservatives are not right-wingers. Are personal choice. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, but anyway, let's see. Here we go. To be honest, I have to say she should not have initiated with the horn in the face. Safety goes without saying, but on top of that, man, you got to keep control and win the optics war. So that's somebody who's talking about, I guess, it's about convincing the normies. Now, I'm guessing you're talking about the anti-vax or the anti-mask, contingency of being more convincing in their argument. So I'm going to weigh in on this a little bit. Because the big stickler for me on this is there's been no nuance, there's been no subtlety, and there's been no science that has been presented in a convincing way to really have these discussions about masks. It's become a very tribal thing. Now, masks outdoors have never been proven to be useful, quite frankly, because the documentation and studies, and look, I'm open to this being refuted, but the documentation that came out of studies in China showed that there was very little risk of outdoor transmission, especially if you're outdoors in the sun on a day like here. Now we can get into other issues of when masks are effective. Basically, they're most effective in small, unventilated spaces. I think that goes without saying. So the fact that we're not using science, and the thing with churches, that's why just banning churches never made sense. Just all churches, because churches are different sizes. You could be in a big, huge cathedral with cavernous ceilings and great ventilation, and you'd probably be at, very little, minuscule risk even, compared to if you're in Queens or the Bronx in a little kind of, street side church that's in a small unventilated building. That's night and day. So we've never talked about risk and transmission risk in terms of environmental factors. It's always been a one size fits all sort of dogma, tribal dogma even, as to whether it's masks or no masks. And I'm of the mind that you should know when a mask is going to be useful, and we should have more scientific discussion about when it's not. For example, when you're outdoors, people that are walking around on the beach with a mask, do you guys remember when there was just photo after photo of beaches that were crowded? It would be interesting if someone really did a study to tell us how, because I can't think of somewhere more safer than the beach, where it's well ventilated, it's hot out, the virus's half-life, again, is minuscule outside in the hot sun. So again, it just seems that what has happened is there's a breakdown of trust in media institutions in the way they're reporting this, the way it's been tribalized and exploited on social media. Let's get back to the video.
Yo, you a dumb motherfucker. Get the fuck out of my friend's face. Get out of my face. Get out of my face. Get out of my
All right, so that's the breakdown of the action. Now you see what the story looks like. I very dispassionately and boringly laid out what the scene is around, what it meant for the counter protesters to go out and actually meet the protesters, and who starts the physical contact. And you can see clearly in that video, once it's slowed down, who starts the physical contact. So Tess Owen of Vice, maybe when you're writing your stories, maybe you could set it up a little differently, in the sense that you can acknowledge that it's not as, she doesn't care, let's be honest. I think that there is a credo here, which is that the means justify the ends. In other words, if they can get to that, the ends justify the means, rather. That if they can get the result that they want, then it's okay to stretch the truth. It's okay to, essentially promote propaganda and to stir the pot. Well, now you have a protest tomorrow. And like we saw that one guy who reacted at Harlow the way he did, based on the headlines from the Cedars-Sinai protest. I would ask him, my question to him, would you have reacted that violently now seeing the way that the events unfolded in slow motion? Would you still react in that way and put other people at risk and put yourself at risk by violently reacting because you thought that headline, which was anti-maskers attack breast cancer patient, makes it sound like she's there for an appointment. As far as we know, she wasn't there for an appointment. She was there aligned with the protesters. would you change your mind or your opinion about, does it change your emotional, visceral reaction? That's my question to man who's just fucking going out for a walk. And that's my question to everybody who's ready to sort of take up arms and be violent against the right. Do you really know what happens at these events? Is it really them attacking maliciously and unprovoked, as it's sort of told in the narrative? It doesn't look like it. Somebody show me or send me more, you know? I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm sure it does. But my question is, are the people who are ready to foment violence tomorrow, Saturday at City Hall, which is what's being stirred up and promoted online on Twitter out in the open, have you seen these videos before? Do you know that the people that you're attacking are the people you think you're attacking? Take some time, do some research on your own. Don't listen to the influencer, and by God, don't listen to Chad Loder. Because who is Chad Loder? Now, if you saw the last episode, and if you go to Twitter, I'm posting section by section. A Pacific Northwest live streamer named Villain Report ended up being confronted by who is neither confirmed or denied to be Chad Loder, according to Chad Loder. A tall man in full black block who speaks with the same intonation, has been identified by everybody and their mother, basically, as Chad Loder, but Chad Loder neither confirms or denies is Chad Loder. This fellow shows up. You know what? I bet you I still have one of the videos here that I could pull up from the last. I'll just give you guys a little look at this, because it's very interesting to see.
Thank you.
This is Villain Report. This is WeSpa.
Why do you call yourself an anti-fascist if you're acting like a fascist?
Fascists have
Only rights for you, but not rights for other people.
Is that right?
Yes, that's how you're acting right now.
I'm sorry.
If you feel that your actions are moral and courageous right now, why are you trying to prevent me from doing my freedom?
You know this guy's name?
You know, I think there's just a big mistrust of media and anybody who's filming.
So what ends up happening is he comes back later and has a long conversation. I won't post all that, but you can look at my Twitter, and I'm breaking it down in small 2-minute sections in which this fellow, let's call him Black Block Chad, says that he thinks that the whole thing is a hoax. Because the one consistent here is that the people on the right wing, according to these Antifa-aligned adherents, is that the people on the right are consistently acting out of bad faith, and they're creating hoaxes. So the Antifa party line on this is that WeSpa didn't happen, that it was a hoax. Even though, and I broke the story with LA Magazine, there were 5 police reports that were filed. 5 separate women who did not know each other filed police reports with LAPD. What happens? A publication called The Blade Los Angeles, which is it's an LGBTQ activist or aligned publication. And I've actually spoken with the editor. I did a conference call with the editor who told me explained that piece was written under a assumed name, a pen name, by someone that was called Robert Lansing, who you don't try to find because that person doesn't exist. And the Robert Lansing article in The Blade quoted anonymous sources at LAPD and anonymous sources at WeSpa. So you have an anonymous writer quoting anonymous sources. And that gets out this narrative that the whole thing is a right-wing activist hoax. Now, never mind that 5 women have filed police reports. That's what gets out. It's picked up and parroted, just like the Cider Sinai story. It's parroted by by The Guardian, by all sort of the usual suspects, the Daily Beast, and they throw doubt on the legitimacy of the Right. The activists, now they called themselves anti-pedophilia and for women, boundaries for women. That's kind of the rhetoric that you heard. They've been referred to by activists as anti-trans specifically. And there is one woman who's mouthing off at a bullhorn who I think you can make that argument for. But there's also an effort of the right-wing group to say it's not about transphobia in their video. And they say it's not about transphobia, it's about saving the children. And everybody always says, oh, well, QAnon said that, so therefore everybody's QAnon. And maybe you do have some crossover. But then maybe you also have people who want to fight sex trafficking or don't want children to be in vulnerable positions and so forth. So it's always a little bit more complicated. The thing that pisses me off is that you're not even allowed to talk about it. You're not even allowed to have a discussion. You're not allowed to ask questions. You're not even allowed to go over and ask the people that were protesting at the WeSpa who had their protest crash and people jumped. I was there on July the 3rd. I watched in the 10 a.m. hour as people were jumped one by one by the Black Bloc and essentially escalating the violence to, the 11 o'clock hour to 11:40, where you had the all-out brawl and melee where you have a right winger with a knife, flailing about and cutting people. That's all an escalation. That's an escalation of events. And I do have a piece that is supposed to come out as well, as where I'm time stamping everything. And I'm just going to say, this is what happened at this time. Now you come back July the 17th. I was there too. I got stuck on the leftist side. Again, if you look at the video, maybe I do have a clip that I can just show you a little bit of. But I got stuck on the leftist side in that, but then I switched over to the other side, and what you saw was chaos all around. And pretty much what ends up happening is 39 people get arrested who are part of the Antifa, SoCal Antifa-lined Black Bloc. They're kettled. The right-wingers go home, not before one guy is macing liberally at will. The first person he maces with some sort of bear spray, which Villain Report says isn't bear spray because he's never felt something that painful in his life. The first person this person maces is Villain Report, who is, I would say he defines himself to be a centrist who is, right-leaning. And so that's the first person who gets maced. The second person is a young woman named Marie, who I've spoken to. She is leftist aligned, but she was willing on July 3rd to talk to people who were getting attacked. So in my book, that counts as somebody who's willing to talk to people of all sides. And then a third young man is also bear sprayed, and they get their phone stolen as well, both Marie and the young man. This is the this is July the 3rd. So this guy in green here, this is at 10:28 a.m. This guy in the green is interesting. He's the one I first saw leading the group and pushing the preacher in blue. The preacher in blue has been pushed out of the way. But this guy in green is shall we say, very active.
Get the fuck out of here!
Now, what happens here? For those of you who don't know, this fellow is named Rocky, and he's an Antifa-aligned or leftist-aligned or activist-aligned, whatever word you want to use, press. It even says press on his helmet. So ridiculous. I've been in the press for 18 years. I've never had to wear anything that said press wherever I've gone. So this is a complete sort of fabulous invention of the activist. He gets hit. He gets hit right here. You can see him clutching his head. Somebody runs, and you'll see him with a flannel. You barely just saw him right there. You see this guy in the flannel here? His hat, you see it looks like it says Riot. It actually says Patriot. The RIOT there. And he's dancing around. And who's that on the left? That is Jairo, who is the organizer of the right-wing protest. And he's standing there right in the middle of the street next to this guy who's been identified as Aaron. And you could see him wearing the Viper-type shades. And, you know, I call this Patriot Black Bloc, or Patriot Bloc, where they're dressed in block, but they have one little thing. Maybe it'll be an American flag patch. For him, it's a backwards hat that says Patriot, and the shades. And then there's Jairo right next to him. Now, Jairo had just been attacked an hour earlier. Jairo had brandished pepper spray, and then he got beaten on the sidewalk. So that was an hour before that. So this is how this is all starting off on July the 3rd. And mind you, this guy that you see here on the right, that's not the first person he clubs there, the leftist. He had also clubbed a Newsmax reporter named James just before on the back, thinking that he was Antifa aligned because James was dressed in all black, you know, to blend in. That's why I'm never going to wear all black to one of these things again. Nobody knows who is who, especially now that the appropriation of the black bloc tactic or Patriot Bloc is a lot more widespread than it was last summer. So I'm not dressing like that again. I'll tell you that. I did last summer just to blend in, but now that we're having these all out melees between two sides, no, thank you. Anyways, this video goes on to show there's the preacher in blue. They go after him. This is an interesting still here. Pausing it here. You see there were two Hispanics, one older, one younger, and you can see them holding the Antifa flag. And this guy's eyes here, second to the left, I actually had a conversation with him. He's definitely a watcher who likes to watch out for people and so forth to make sure they're... And then you see this guy just rolling up on him, two closed fists. You see his broken sunglasses and the dirt on his face.
Get out of here.
Yellow! Stick together! Yellow! Hey! Jesus loves trans people, okay?
So that is how it kind of all starts off. That's where we are, folks. That's what activism is right now, is all out street warfare. I'm against it. I've said so. I don't believe that this leads anywhere good. I believe that it just builds and builds. And what is scary is what could happen. You know, I feel like we're on borrowed time, that we've been lucky so far. What do you guys think? I'll look at some of the comments. Someone says it looks god-awful. It is god-awful. It is god-awful. I agree. I support that. Let's see. What else? The guy who clubbed was part of this group. The group with the little brown gay dude, they rolled up in the vehicle and got out and initiated the attack, I think, really without good cause. Okay, well, the dude that you're talking about, Jairo, had just got beaten up an hour before. So when you say, I think, really without good cause, you got to look at the whole morning. What happens? Jairo shows up, the slight gentleman, and I've interviewed him on this show. He shows up. He has two signs with him. One of them says "wee spa," spelled WEEWEE. I guess it's a penis illusion. That sign is stolen away from him by a woman named Jamie, who is on the Koreatown Council. She's an activist who's Antifa aligned. She takes the first sign from him and rips it up. He then sort of takes out, he has another sign that says, "Trans activism erases women's rights." And he's on the bullhorn with that sign, and he's trying to tell the crowd that he has trans friends. They don't believe him. They laugh, blah, blah, blah. They jeer. And then somebody steals that sign from him. Well, he goes, and I call him out on the show on this. I said, why did you go all the way to your bag, get the pepper spray, and then walk all the way back to brandish it at this guy? Because naturally, the guy, it ends up becoming a whole thing. Hyro eventually sprays a little bit of it on him. They knock him down, and then 4 other guys come, and they just start kicking him and beating him. So where does it start? Who started it? Who made the first physical motion? Well, if we apply the Cedar Sinai thing, where the bullhorn, that's the question. Is your physical property an extension of you? It isn't baseball, right? Or, the ball and the mitt are an extension of your person, or, when you're shooting and you're fouled and, it's like your person and the object are part of the same, so if you knock somebody's phone down, if you knock their bullhorn, if you take their sign from them, I would guess that that's instigation. Now, I'm not a law enforcement person. I'd be interested to look at that. And when it comes down to it, and you ask, who starts these things? These are my questions. Is it the same group all the time? Is it always the left rolling up on the right? I know one really famous instance where it's the opposite, and that's the Cider Riot in Portland. The Cider Riot is very clearly Patriot Prayer, Joey Gibson grandstanding in front of a ale house called Cider Riot. And then Cider Riot happens. And we talked to a guy who filmed there. Andy No is also on the scene. And what the leftists like to do is say that he planned that as an attack. But Patriot Prayer at the Cider Riot is going to their space. I don't know how many more, situations like that there are. I would guess that there's regional variation with all of this, because the thing about Antifa, and Chad Loder has said this, is that when I was commenting about did you guys see Portland? What went down in Portland this last weekend, where a whole bunch where basically a prayer event by a Canadian Polish preacher, outdoor preacher, Joey Gibson of Patriot Prayer was attending this event. The Antifa group moved in and basically threw fireworks in the direction of kids. One woman is giving a testimonial about how a woman raised her hand, blocked a firework from hitting a kid in the face. They're throwing eggs, and they're just being all around terrible. I asked Chad Loder about this, and I said, what's the justification of this? Like, seriously, what the hell? And Chad Loder was like, you got to ask Portland about Portland. What does that tell us? That tells us that people are not weighing in on each other's scene, that there is true autonomy locally within these Antifa-aligned groups, even though they're ideologically aligned, which gives some, I get an ounce of truth to Joe Biden's statement that it's just an idea. It gives an ounce of truth. They are ideologically aligned. This is ideological warfare. But each of these scenes is different. You're dealing with 26 different local stories and trying to tie them together and make them into a national story, I've often said. Each of these scenes has its own autonomy. So you got to ask the Portland guys about Portland. Well, LA hasn't been like this. WeSpa looked like a turning point. There were some things that led up to that. I was in Hollywood, April 15th, I believe was the date, in Hollywood, where a guy named Kalen, who is a right-wing aligned streamer, was live streaming on Instagram, and he was dressed in black bloc. The crowd figures him out, and they beat him. That night, in what, I don't know if it was a retaliation or just overall idiocy, but a couple of the usual suspect right-wingers go and destroy a Black Lives Matter vigil memorial to Adam Toledo and Dante Wright. and that was in the middle of April. The last time that we really had widespread sort of riots that were happening up in Oakland at the same time, and that was Brooklyn Center. You'll remember Brooklyn Center near Minneapolis, and we had riots that were happening, across the country at that time in April. So a couple of these guys, one of them is one of the fellows who get doxxed on July 17th at We Spa Riot 2. He goes and he destroys the Black Lives Matter Memorial, which was candles and signs set up on the corner of Vine and Sunset. So at the end of that month, at the end of April, is when the SoCal Antifa account pops up on Twitter. I think like April 28th or so. It pops up and they make their first tweet. So the SoCal Antifa account now has been very consistent. There's another group called the Autonomous Anarchist Front of Los Angeles. There are other smaller groups and activist groups who aren't necessarily Black Bloc, but are leftist aligned. But we see the tension building in the middle of April. Now, before that, to be quite honest, Chad Loder said Jeremy's new. He's actually accurate with that. I'm not going to lie. I have not wanted to go out much in LA because I live here. And so I have not wanted to be out in my backyard. I've been to We Spa several times. I know We Spa back and forth. We Spa. The thing about We Spa that's interesting is, and I went 2 times since the riots, and it's 3 levels. The top level is co-ed, where people there's a cafe, you can get bibimbap, Korean food. Then there's places where you can lie down. There's even like a reading library and computers. There's places where you can lay down and nap. And then they have these little domes that are super hot. You could go in, that are kind of co-ed saunas. There is a elevator that says women only on the 3rd floor of We Spa that goes down to it's actually the 2nd floor, the co-ed floor. It goes down to floor 1, which is the men's floor. And then 1 floor below that is the quote unquote, basement floor. And that's where the women are. So the women and the men are on separate levels for the public bathing areas. A lot of people don't understand. This isn't just an issue of like a locker room and somebody saw something while they were changing. These are fully nude bathing pools. So where someone will get into the jacuzzi pool naked. And the big complaint that these 5 women that filed complaints, and I asked the LAPD, I used to live in New York and work in press there. But I asked LAPD, I said, can you confirm in the video, the women mention a 14-year-old girl specifically and a 9-year-old girl. It is okay if you're accompanied with an adult to be a minor in these public baths. I went to Japan when I was younger, and I remember going and it's a weird cultural experience, especially if you're a kid who's like 13 or 12 and you're there and like everybody's running around naked and bathing and then you come home and, you go back to school and you're like, hey, guess what I saw this summer? And you kind of have the most interesting story to tell, amongst your friends, certainly. But there's nothing nefarious about it, about public same-sex bathing, same-sex by genital presentation. Remember, these are Korean and Japanese traditional baths. They're called onsen in Japanese. There's another word in Korean. Actually, I'll bring up in my translator. It sounds just like onsen to describe the public baths. But the thing to know is that there's nothing nefarious about it, But the difference is here's another interesting thing. Sauna comes from Finland. Finnish sauna is, and they actually do sauna co-ed, but it's more rural. Sauna is, more of a community, a smaller thing. It's not like a big city thing. So this is a very different thing. But that's Finland. Every culture has its traditions. But in Korea or in, Japan, and someone I know, a friend of mine, she said in New York, she would go to Korean spa all the time. And you see the young ladies washing the old ladies' back and so forth. They're separated by genital presentation. And so is there a conversation? Can we at least talk about that? Is there a conversation to be had about whether you want to honor certain traditions? The talking point in the Blade article has always been that WeSpa is a LGBT friendly environment. Well, yeah, and I would say most places in Los Angeles, almost all are. But that doesn't mean that there was something special that WeSpa was doing. I talked to one of the owners of WeSpa, and they said, we are abiding by the laws of the state of California. We are abiding by the police investigation. That was according to the owner. Now, the owner says they have not made any other statements. I talked to some of the maintenance staff. This is in Spanish. I went into WeSpa. I talked to the guy at the towel station. This is what they told me. I talked to 3 of them in Spanish. All right. As of now, before I tell you what they said, nobody has yet confirmed that the person that was there identified as transgender. If you watch the video, the WeSpa video, if you watch it closely, the manager is speaking theoretically, and she says that she has not seen this person. She says, I was not working. I don't know. I didn't see this person. And she's speaking theoretically. If this is a transgender person, we cannot deny them the right if they identify that way. She's speaking hypothetically and theoretically because she admits that she doesn't know that this person is. In fact, in the video, the first person, if it is the first person, to mention transgender is in the white t-shirt, and he has the mustache, and he's kind of like, you're being a dick. So that guy, woke guy, I think they were calling him, he's the first one to mention transgender. And then Angel says transgender doesn't exist. I'm not going to make excuses and say one way or another. I believe she probably believes, according to her Instagram, she has, people pointed out that she's evangelical, but there is a right-wing point of view that is saying is centering language around biological definitions and so forth. And we can get in this whole debate. I don't want to. I have no interest in it for the purposes of this podcast. Maybe if Angel were to come on this podcast, I would ask her. I would say, hey, do you recognize trans rights? Do you recognize that people, and then we get into a more interesting conversation about it, but again, you have to talk to these people to find out anything. Just dismissing them and saying it's a hoax based on a fake author's fake investigation from fake sources, it's not going to do it. And I know those were fake because I talked to the WeSpa employees. According to the Blade article, the WeSpa said it's by appointment only. False. You don't need an appointment to go to WeSpa. They said it was by appointment only, and none of the transgender regulars had registered. Well, it's asinine of the editor of The Blade to have let the story go to press. I've spoken to him, and I'll say it again. There's so many holes in that Blade story that are just BS. I talked to the LAPD. They said we never said anything like that. The first police report was filed the evening of July 6th. The Blade report came out the next day, July 7th. How could they make a determination, as quoted in the Blade, that police believe that there was never anybody transgender there and that it was a hoax? How can you make that claim if the very first of 5 police reports was only filed the night before? There's so much that's wrong with journalism that a pen name can use unnamed sources and put something out that then drives the narrative so quickly and is parroted by so many other publications to a point where Chad Loder himself is saying in conversation with Villain that I played, and you could see it on my Twitter, himself is saying that he still thinks it's a hoax. This is something that's iterated by It's Going Down, which is the Bay Area where I'm from, radical publication that likes to attack me as well. So these activists would rather just say it's a hoax. These are not legitimate people. They don't deserve to be heard. And we saw that this week. I actually asked a question of somebody that was at the Cider Sinai event who popped up on the thread. And I said, hey, and I asked a question. And then it was just an avalanche of retweeting me and saying that I'm asking an abuser or a bigot or this or that. And so therefore I am, and I'm not operating in good faith because I'm asking, a question about how things went down either at WeSpa or for the right wing or at Cider Sinai. You got to be able to ask questions. We need a free press. We cannot be bowing down to bullies and people that would disparage us and use Twitter in a weaponized way to silence. And that was my big statement today. Earlier I tweeted about that we really have to stand up to bullies. And what did I say? I said, to those who slander, gaslight, and label you for asking questions or talking to people they think should be silenced. We need a free press, not one that turns a blind eye when mobs and authoritarians make demands. Now, of all the things that Chad Loder has called me, Quisling, cretin, Andy No, of all the things that he's labeled me, or that I'm a right-wing propagandist or not operating in good faith. The only thing that I've said of him is that I would like for him to answer the questions fairly, have a conversation, not do this sort of gaslighting and retweeting where this defamation campaigns. Take it easy. You don't have to do that. You don't have to act up and get, 30 people to attack me just because you like it. You don't have to retweet me 13 times last Saturday and 11 times yesterday. You don't have to do that. We could just talk about the points one by one. But this is not necessarily a good faith operator that I'm talking to. And I've known it all along. I was just very interested. Everything needs to be proven. So whereas you say, I think that person is this, now I know. Now I know that this person's dishonest, that this person is a labeler. The only thing that I have said is that he acts as an authoritarian. To say who I can and cannot talk to and to shut me down and label me, that's authoritarianism. Villain said it best. If you're supposed to be anti-fascist, then why are you acting like a fascist? As an authoritarian. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. They know it's bullshit. They keep doing it because they get attention. The currency here is likes. It's getting followers. Vishal in his episodes in which he had 4 violent episodes in a row that he was involved in. First, he gets clubbed, right, by the LAPD. And again, he shouldn't have gotten clubbed. He's standing there filming with a camera, and he gets the camera hand clubbed. That's BS. But then there's another thing that goes down. I don't even want to sort of get into that one. Where was that one? Like El Camino or something. I can't remember where it was. But there's another incident. Then there's the Cider Sinai incident, which he's not even filming. And then there's the Harlow incident, which he lines up against Mr. I'm just trying to go for a walk and hit people in the face. No, does he hit people in the face? No, the guy that freaks out pushes people down and does a lot of, but he doesn't actually hit people in the face. It's Vishal that gets hit in the face. And the guy that does the hitting, I guess, is some MMA guy that they've been naming, who, in my opinion, does a punk-ass move, the body block, gets Vishal to run into him from behind. So what's the currency in all this? Well, for the left, it's more Twitter followers. Your Twitter followers will skyrocket from 4,000 to 7,900. You have more engagement. Now, there's a reason it's so funny. One of the Antifa line press, Andrew, was like, he doesn't have any reach about me. He doesn't have any reach. So I don't have any reach. Why don't I have reach? Because I'm having long, dispassionate discussions. I'm not sensationalizing things. I'm not taking them out of context. I'm not speaking to people's tribal needs. I'm trying to actually get us to go somewhere with this stuff. So that's why I don't have any reach. The other thing is this. they are connected with, 100, let's say 100 something active people in their scene that are constantly retweeting and liking things to be a part of a narrative. The narrative is that they're the only thing that stands between the next Charlottesville right around the corner and the Nazi ethno-state walking in. That I firmly believe after these last 2 weeks that they have that fantastical delusion. And the reason that I can say that with total certainty is the number of comments that I get that are about Nazis, where we haven't talked about Nazis in all of these events. There's been nothing about Nazis. No one of these people at the anti-vax or at the We Spa are identifiable Nazis, and yet that's where the conversation goes. That I am talking to Nazis, and it's so absurd. It's so absurd that a normal person in a normal scenario would just laugh and just laugh themselves silly at how ridiculous this all is. But the problem is that Twitter is not a normal ecosystem. Twitter is this other alternate universe where you can gin up animus, where you can silence people, where those people don't have a voice, where they're deplatformed, where they don't have a chance to make a rebuttal on the disparagement, on the labels, on everything else. And you can actually get somebody fired. You can get them to lose their job by going after their employer. And I've seen Chad Loder do that in the Northern California situation. I don't know if you guys know about the pig's head on the doorstep, but there's a pig's head that was left on a doorstep. Some activists did this in Sonoma County, Santa Rosa, left it on what they thought was going to be a police officer's front door, but he doesn't live there anymore. So somebody else wakes up middle of the night, 3 a.m., hears stuff, sees a bloody pig's head on their front door and blood splattered everywhere. Well, Chad Loder went so strong against the Trump supporter who infiltrated this group and released audio recordings of Sonoma County Radical Action. Chad Loder went so hard against the guy that exposed this that he was cited as a reputable voice in Petaluma, where this guy was a teacher and so forth. And so to say that the Twitter bullshit universe doesn't extend itself to real parts of the world is naive. People get fired by just loose association of this guy is a Nazi, this guy loves swastikas. That was Chad Loder's thing. Now this guy, mind you, is a Native American and Latino guy who they're calling a neo-Nazi. And now it's being used by the defense lawyer. The defense lawyer is actually saying and telling press that he believes his clients who have been charged in felony vandalism for the pig's head were charged because it's all a neo-Nazi who has set this up and is the person behind the curtain. So, and mind you, this guy, again, I can't remember which tribe affiliation. I had it written down, but let me look really quick because it is interesting. I have so many things on so many photos, so many screenshots, so much has been saved to my phones. I have like 4 phones full of data and I can't even process it anymore. But this Twitter thing also has repercussions in real life because I get threatened. Now, I'm going to back it up. Somebody said the very first comment, let's see, the very first comment, where was it? Somebody said something about, Chad Loder's gonna, maybe, is it gone? The very first comment was speculating that the Antifa Black Bloc will be out for me tomorrow. That was the speculation. I don't know that that's the case. Chad actually said something to the opposite. This is what, after all of this discourse and back and forth and abuse that I get, Chad blocks me. He's done it before. He comes back. He wrote this. Chad wrote, physically attacking members of the press when they're clearly identified, don't participate directly in actions, and maintain a respectful distance continues to be a losing tactic. Really? So he's saying, don't attack the press. But then he goes on to say, I don't want to hear lib shit or peace please from folks who are never on the ground either. So it's a mixed message because it means he doesn't want to hear people peace pleasing. That's when he was actually very critical of all right, on the 17th of July, the police move in. They make sure that the right and the left, the leftists and those who are protesting the anti-pedophilia, whatever sort of right-wing aligned cause, and the leftists can't get close to each other because the police break it up. Now when Vishal gets his hand broke, there's a actual melee in the video. I'm not going to comment on who did what first, but they get into it with the police. On the right, you see somebody acting as peace police. A guy named Will, I believe his name. He's a black, conservative-aligned photojournalist that I've seen way back when I went back in June of last year. I was looking for white supremacists. I thought white supremacists were doing everything. So I went to Tulsa because I was like, if the white supremacists are here, they'll be bragging at President Trump's first speech since the lockdowns. I was like, and since the George Floyd riots, I was like, it's got to be the white supremacists. The white supremacists are doing everything. And then I couldn't find any white supremacists. There were a couple of Proud Boys, and they actually smoked out with a Black Lives Matter dude who had some weed, and they all lit up. And I was like, wait a second, this isn't fitting. How are these Proud Boys guys neo-Nazis if they're smoking a doobie with this guy with a Rasta tam who was playing Bob Marley as this love? So things weren't fitting, but they were going up against BLM and, it was sort of tribal back and forth. But then this other group started praying together. I saw a lot of different things in Tulsa that changed my mind. But one of the guys that was there at Tulsa was this guy named Will. He's black. He has long braids. And I always tell people this story that I saw two people arguing in Tulsa. One was a white kid who had a polo shirt, and then the other guy was a black dude with long braids. And whenever I tell this to somebody on the left, they kind of groan and they're like, oh man, about the white kid with the polo shirt. But then I tell them, but the white kid with the polo shirt was arguing in support of Black Lives Matter. And the black guy with the long, braids was arguing in support of Trump MAGA. And they kind of go, what? And blows their mind. And it did to me. I had to do a double take at first. I also saw a couple of gay dudes in really short jorts and they had rainbow, I think it was a rainbow umbrella. And they had hats that said Trump 2024. This was back last June. And there were just a bunch of gay dude Trump supporters. So in other words, what my stereotype of what the Trump people was didn't match. I went looking everywhere for Nazi symbols. I found one guy in Tulsa at the president's speech who had an 88 tattoo on his calf. 88 tattoo is a neo-Nazi gang, symbol. Obviously it refers to HH. So this guy, this one guy, and this is where I adopted my rule. You can't fucking define a protest based on one person. Just because there's one person there who knows what the fuck his deal was, doesn't make the whole protest all of a sudden a neo-Nazi protest. It just doesn't. And that's the same thing. I apply that same principle to the WeSpa. We know of one person who deliberately targeted and had an Instagram post against a trans live streamer who is Antifa aligned. We know that one person to be exhibiting, I guess what you can call transphobic behavior. Does that one person make the entire right wing transphobic? That's my question. Can you judge an entire protest by its worst actor? That goes also to the Capitol riot. When I was at the Capitol riot, you saw a guy with the Camp Auschwitz shirt. There's also a Proud Boy back on December, the 12th, that had a 6 million. I talked to Brett Weinstein about this. He had a shirt that said 6MWE, and it's supposed to mean 6 million wasn't enough. So it's an anti-Semitic Semitic coded shirt. So the question then becomes, does the one person with the one shirt in the crowd define the protest for everybody else, even if they don't see him? A lot of people didn't see the Camp Auschwitz guy. I was watching, John Sullivan did this podcast, and we were watching through the video, and the guy was right next to John Sullivan at one point. You know, whoever this guy was in this shirt, and I think the back of his shirt says staff. So he's trying to, he's trying to be funny, I guess. But this person, does he define the whole, 40,000 people that were at the Capitol riot as being, anti-Semitic? Does he? No, of course not. There were Israeli flags there. There were Korean flags. There were, so this fantastical idea, and this is what happens when you have too much power. If you have too much power and the press belongs to one ideological sector, you start squashing debate. You become authoritarian. You don't know who your opponent actually is. It becomes a fantastical iteration or caricature in your head of who your opponent is. Are there problems right now? Yes, there are. As far as I would like it if, and who knows, maybe I'll have more of a discussion with the anti-vax people. I'm dealing with, some of this stuff in my own personal life as far as having a partner who is not vaccinated, who has indicated they will get the Johnson & Johnson. We'll see. We keep going back and forth on this. I believe people shouldn't be pushed into anything. I think there are grander conspiracy thinking when it comes to vaccine and big pharma, as far as why they're doing this. And, my dad's a public health doctor, so I get it from the medical perspective. And there was not any hesitancy on my part to take the vaccine. Different people have different approaches. I do not believe that the stick works. The four medical doctors I was sitting with, one of them turned to me and he says, well, so what do you think, the carrot or the stick? The age-old question, the carrot or the stick? I said, the carrot, absolutely. I mean, Antifa is about the stick. Antifa is, we're going to beat these people into thinking like we do. And I don't think that's how it works. I know that that's not how it works. And they should know too. And I would challenge every Antifa-aligned adherent to go as yourself to a right-wing gathering and just talk to people. Just start to see them as different than the caricature from 2017 that you see in your head that, yes, gives you the hits and gives you the meaning and the feeling of tribalism, but may not be 100% accurate. So that was the question for this podcast, which is, are the people who you think are your enemy, are they really your enemy? The people who you're attacking, are they really the people you envision to be attacking? I'll look at some last questions maybe. I see there's a lot of chat, a lot of back and forth. Thank you for people who say kind things like this. Jeremy dropping the truth bombs right now. I like it. I needed to do this. I needed some support because after a 2-week, pile on, I called this episode Avalanche of Lies because there were so many lies that came out of activist media that have snowballed and generated animus. One of the first questions or one of the first statements that somebody said, will I get attacked? I hope not. I hope that I've made a point that it doesn't, that squashing free speech doesn't help anybody. If I could get Chad Loder to say that attacking journalists is a losing tactic, I'll take it. I'll absolutely take it. Thanks, everybody. I agree with this statement. I'm not for violence unless it is in self-defense. I agree with that statement 100%. I'm a pacifist. I do not believe in it. Even it has to be a dire case of self-defense. In these situations where you're at a protest, you better watch out. Because all these people who are reacting in self-defense, they're losing for another reason. They're losing because the activist media is able to capture them in that 11 seconds and brand them as violent, far right, whatever. And they're so good at it. So I don't think violence works even as self-defense unless somebody is really, really threatening your life. So, we'll see about that. Hey, you guys, thanks for joining the chat. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all the supportive comments. I really appreciate it. We'll see. I may go live tomorrow at some point. I really have to scope the situation out because, again, when you have when you have a guy with 90,000 followers who's the de facto influencer of the Los Angeles leftist activist scene, constantly retweeting, labeling you, generating animus, then you get comments like, "Well, what about one milkshake?" That's what someone said. And the next Andy No thing, extremely played out. That keeps being thrown my way. You know what? What do you guys think? Should I have Andy No on as a guest? I would talk to Andy No. I'm very curious. I don't agree with Andy No all the time. I'm curious how he judges his own work as far as the mistakes he makes, if they're the same that I see on the left, in the sense that people are going too quickly. You have biases, tribal biases. There are a couple articles that I would take issue with. One of them was, I think I've talked about the Dayton article he wrote for the New York Post about Dayton killing, asking if it was the first Antifa, mass shooting. I thought that article was not sound at all. So it would be interesting to talk to him. Someone said yes. Why not? I think we'd have an interesting conversation. What do I got to lose at this point? I can talk to anybody. They've already said all the bad things about me that they could say, just for wanting to ask questions and get to the truth and talk to people. So I'm just going to keep doing that. I am going to keep doing that. And thanks again for the support. And everybody, take care. Have a good weekend. Hopefully this story will die down and be nothing and carry on as a whimper from this point forward. So thanks, folks. Thanks for joining me. This has been Unblocked Live, the anti-polarization and anti-bullying podcast. Catch you next time.